Okay, y'all, I'm got a pretty long video today. I've been working on this for about a week. Been locked in the house with snow, so but I just wanted to give a warning that, this particular video is not going to be friendly about Christmas or Easter. It's not going to be friendly about a lot of things. It's going to be the red pill. So I wanted to just give you a warning before we get started. I've got a lot of information, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, okay? The first scripture I'm going to read is in Jeremiah chapter 7, starting in verse 30. For the children of Judah have done evil in my sight, saith the Lord. They have set their abominations in the house which is called by my name to pollute it. And they have built the high places of Tophets, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, and burnt their sons and daughters in the fire, which I commanded them not, neither came into my heart. Therefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that there shall be no more called Tophet, nor the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of slaughter, for they shall bury in Tophet till there be no place. So I want to talk about this word Tophet. A Tophet is a religious site that was used for child sacrifice. And these pagan people, they would burn, usually it was newborns or fetuses that they would burn. And they would take the ashes and they would place the ashes in an urn. And they would bury the urn, and they would have a little stone monument that was on top of the urn with the symbol of the god or goddess that particular offering was given to. So the largest Tophet that has been found, I think, to date was in Carthage, and it said around 80% of the urns that they dug up were newborn or fetus bones was in them. The other rest were animal bones, but 80% in this Tophet were infants. So this we have to understand who these gods were, because this sort of thing still is part of our life today. Unknowingly, it's still part of our life today. And I want to look at some of the history behind this, and we're going to focus on, this word Tophet and what it is. So, these bloodthirsty gods of long ago, they still have a strong hold in our society today. It's on the high holy days of these gods that pagans would burn their own flesh. They would burn their own babies. And now modern day Christians celebrate these same days. And so the two highest gods would have been the sun god, which would be the male, and the female consort to the sun god is the moon, which is usually a fertility goddess. And the names of these different sun gods, they vary, because of the language change, but their characteristics are all the same. And some of the names that you might recognize from the Bible as the sun god are Baal, Molech, Chemosh. Those are all names of the sun god. And the more modern names are the Greek Kronos, or he's also known as Father Time, and then the Roman Saturn. And we know that these they have different names, but they are the sun god. They are the same. They all have these same characteristics and things. And these particular gods, they require blood as far as they've required child sacrifice. And so the high holy days for Kronos and Saturn, that is December 25th. And of course we know that that is the winter solstice, and the reason that they chose this day as the high holy day for the sun, because that was the day that the sun was reborn to them. You know, the days began to get longer at that time, and so that was a rebirth of the sun. So that is their high holy day. They would have these Saturnalia, if you've ever heard of, they would just have these drunken orgies, just all this debauchery would happen during the Saturnalia. And, you know, pregnancies would happen at that time because it was just a free-for-all with the orgies and the sexual perversions that happened during this celebration of Saturnalia. And so then you would have 9 months later, you have the spring equinox. And so that is a day that is in honor of the moon goddess, or the fertility goddess. And there is also a lot of sexual perversions that go along with the fertility goddess. You know, you've heard of temple prostitutes that is referred to in the Bible. Well, this was, you know, worship of the goddess. This was what they did. They had fertility. They had temple prostitutes. And so some of the names that you might recognize for the fertility goddess is Ashtaroth, Astarte, Queen of Heaven. All of these are the names that are given in the Bible. But the one that you should most recognize is the goddess Ostara, or Eostra, or what is commonly called Easter. And these are all the same goddess. They are all exactly the same person, God, whatever you want to call it, as they refer to her as Ashtaroth. That is Easter. Okay, it's all the same. So you have this same fertility, sexual worship going on with her as well. So she also received child sacrifices. So you have these babies that were conceived at the winter solstice. Well, they would be born, or they would be fetuses at the time of the spring equinox, and they would be perfect sacrifices for the fertility goddess. And so then you have this same behavior again at the spring equinox, which would then, they would have conceived babies. 9 months later, you're back to the winter solstice, and you have more harvest of sacrifices. I know it sounds awful to call it a harvest, but these people they're wicked people, and it was a cycle, and that is what they did, and they did it over and over and over, and it was a very common thing. That is why we see today with Christmas, it is very child oriented, because that whole worship of Saturn, it was about offering a baby. It was about placing the baby on this God and receiving blessing from the God because you gave up your child. So, you know, these two most sacred holidays, the modern day church, it's rooted in sexual perversion and sacrifice of infants. You know, you can just keep your head in the sand if you like, but you know, this is the truth. I have studied this very deeply for the last 15 years or so, and it's just shocking, and it's just the truth of it is you will be held accountable for these things, and so it's better to know the truth. And so I'd like to read some historical accounts on this subject. And The first detailed account comes from Clatarius. It's an early 3rd century BCE historian to Alexander the Great, and he was quoted as saying, "Phoenicians and above all Carthaginians worship Kronos. If they wish to achieve something big, they devote a child of theirs. In the case of success, sacrifice it to the god. There is a bronze statue of Kronos among them, which stands upright with his arms and palms and hands facing upward above the bronze brazier on which the child is burnt. When the flames reach the body, the victim's limbs stiffen and tense with tense mouth almost seems like it is laughing until the final spasm, the child falls into the brazier." Now see, this is disgusting to us, but you need to keep in mind of this red hot thing that has his arm extended, and you place your child in its lap. Okay, another detailed account was from a 3rd century BCE historian. Oh, that's the one I just read, sorry. The 1st century BCE Greek historian Diodorus Siculus writes that when the Carthaginians were besieged by Agathocles and Syracuse in 310 BCE, the Carthaginians responded by sacrificing large numbers of children according to an old custom that they had abandoned. They also alleged that Kronos had turned against them inasmuch as former times they had been accused to sacrifice to this god the noblest of their sons. But the more recently secretly buying and nurturing children, they had sent these to the sacrifice, and when an investigation was made, some of those who had been sacrificed were discovered to have been substituted by stealth. That to me sounds like child trafficking. In their zeal to make amends for the omission, they selected 200 of the noblest children and sacrificed them publicly, and the others who were under suspicion sacrificed themselves voluntarily, in number not less than 300. Now see, the Carthaginians actually called their god Baal Haman, but see, he's the exact same, so, you know, Alexander the Great and them, they would just refer to him as Kronos because that's the Greek version. And there was a city that a bronze image of Kronos extended its hands, palms up and sloping towards the ground, so that each of the children was placed thereon, rolled down, and fell into the gaping pit filled with fire. Elsewhere in his work, Diodorus claims that very wealthy Carthaginians would purchase infant slaves in lieu of their own children. There again, you have child trafficking. You have this thing. This is so important to them. They are willing to buy people's children. They're willing to steal people's children. Anything to get the children and give them to Kronos for this offering. It was that important. It was that child focused. So you have to remember, you have to just start thinking about the things that we do in modern day society. This Kronos would have been stoked red hot. It would have a fire under it. It was metal, and it would glowed red. So you take your children and you place them on the lap of this red god, this god that you have already told them that has a list, this god that can work miracles, that can go around the world, this god that knows everything, this god that watches over them, this god that is going to bless them if they are a good person. You need to consider what you're doing to these children and how you are basically reenacting this worship of Kronos. And I know it sounds ridiculous to you, but this is the truth. It is a reenactment of giving your child and over to Kronos. So the writer Plutarch also mentions the practice. He says, with full knowledge and understanding, they themselves offered up their own children, and those who had no children would buy little ones from poor people and cut their throats as if so many of the lambs of the young birds. Meanwhile, the mother stood by without a tear or moan. But should she utter a single moan or let fall a single tear, she had to forfeit the money, and her child was sacrificed nevertheless. And the whole area before the statue was filled with loud noise and flutes and drums, so that the cries and wailing could not reach the ears of the people. Now, we've heard the song Little Drummer Boy, Jingle Bells, all of that. Where do you think all that comes from? You know, they bang these drums, the little drummer boy banged these drums so that you wouldn't hear the screams of the children, the babies, the infants being burned alive. History has a way of repeating itself. We now call, excuse me, we now call this slaughter of the innocent, we call it abortion. You know, taking their bodies and burning them, just like these pagans of old. You know, these savage pagans, they you know, this God this is the God today is the God of selfishness. You know, and they're offering them up on the altar of convenience. You know, these Jezebel women, all they care about is themselves. You know, they slaughter their own flesh out of convenience. And as far as I'm concerned, God should shut their wombs up permanently. But that's just my opinion. So there's another goddess, and her name is Sybil. She's the same. She's Easter. She's, you know, she's the same. Astarte, Easter, all of them. This one is called Sybil. And her story has, you know, it's all about various things. And the female goddess, well, she usually has certain powers, and she also is sort of, the male penis is kind of a focus for this female goddess. And, you know, part of one of the, you know, Sybil's, part of Ishtar's story is that she can turn a bird, she turned a bird into an egg-laying rabbit. You know, that's, the Cadburys didn't come up with that. That's ancient folklore that has to do with this goddess. And, you know, her husband was cut into pieces, and she found all the pieces trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together, but she couldn't find his penis. So then she erects these big penis things, and we call them obelisks. And they became a focus of worship. The largest one in the United States is the Washington Monument. And we find them all over modern day Christian churches. They're called steeples. You know, so that is how this stuff has infiltrated our society. It is very, very deeply infiltrated in our society that a modern day, that a Christian church would have a steeple. Why do you have a steeple? It is an obelisk. An obelisk is a pagan worship symbol. We know this. That is what it is. It's a sun god. It's a penis. It's ridiculous. But, you know, the mother goddess of Rome was the center of a rather bloody Phrygian cult, in which the eunuch priest would perform mysterious rites in her honor. Her lover was Attis, and he was her grandson. He was also her grandson. So see, these stories with these gods and goddesses and all that, they're all just a bunch of perverts. It's just all perversions. And so her jealousy caused him to castrate and kill himself, and his blood was the source of the first violets. You see, they attribute things that happen naturally, and they attribute it to these things that these gods and goddesses are doing. They don't want to give God any credit for these things. They want to attribute it to these false gods. And so, his blood was the source of the first violets, and divine intervention allowed Attis to be resurrected by Sybil with help from Zeus. So now this woman, Sybil, she's able to raise people from the dead with the help of the sun god Zeus. So see, then there is still an annual 3-day celebration of Attis's rebirth and Sybil's power. You see, these people, they want to like intermingle stuff, and that's where we get all this confusion. Okay, like Attis, it is said that Sybil's followers would work themselves into an orgasmic frenzy and then ritually castrate themselves. After these priests had donned women's clothing and assumed female identities. We see that right happening. They are known as Galliae. In some religions, female priestesses led civil decadence in ritual involving ecstatic music, drumming, and dancing, and under the leadership of Augustus Caesar, Sybil became extremely popular, and he built a temple for her in Palatine. Now see, there's nothing new under the sun. Absolutely nothing. And we are seeing firsthand in our society, these demons are gaining power and strength. And you've got to ask yourself why. Because so many people are worshiping them unknowingly. They're just participating in these things unknowingly. And then they have plopped Yeshua, the Messiah, in the middle of these demonic feast days, of these bloody, perverted, sexual, disgusting child sacrifice feast days. They have placed our Messiah, and that is not a good thing to do. It's why would you ever put the Messiah in with these demonic things? This information is not hard. I've been studying this for the last probably 15 years. It's very easy to find this information. And it's very interesting and it's sad at the same time. But you should never put Yeshua in with any of this. He doesn't belong in this. We are to separate ourselves from this stuff. We are not to be anything like these people. So let's read Leviticus chapter 18 and starting in verse 20. Oh, yeah. Verse 20. Moreover, thou shalt not carnally lie with thy neighbor's wife to defile thyself and with her, and thou shalt not let thy seed pass through the fire of Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not lie with mankind, as womankind is an abomination, neither shall you lie with a beast, as it defiles therein. Neither shall woman stand before a beast to lie thereunto, it is a confusion. Defile not yourselves in any of these things, for in all these things the nations are defiled, which I cast out before you, and the land is defiled. Therefore I do visit the iniquity thereof upon it, and the land itself vomited out her inhabitants. And ye shall therefore keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not commit any of these abominations, neither any of your own, nor your stranger, or the stranger that sojourneth among you. For the land will spew you out also, when ye defile it, as it is spewed out the nations that were before you. For whosoever shall commit any of these abominations, even the souls that commit them shall be cut off from among their people. Therefore you shall keep mine ordinances, that you commit not any one of these abominable customs which were committed before you, that you not defile yourself. I am Yahweh your God. He places this child sacrifice in the same boat as homosexuality, as bestiality. He says that it is an abomination, and it is something that is worthy for you to have your soul cut off. So this is a very serious thing. All of these things. And we know that today, sadly, the modern day church, it accepts most all of it. You know, I think there's still, they don't accept bestiality, but you know, there's probably time. They probably will. They accept everything else. You know, you have transgenders, you have homosexuals, lesbians, you have even pedophilia happening rampant in the church, and then you have the abortion, which is letting your child pass through the fire of Molech. It's no different. It's no different. And so the United States of America, the land, the United States of America, is defiled. It's a modern day Tophet. It is a modern day Tophet. You know, yearly there is almost 1 million abortions done in the United States alone. I mean, I don't know what the count is worldwide. I can't even imagine. But the amount of innocent blood that has shed yearly, it is a modern day Tophet. And it is massive, the amount of innocent blood. You know, and for us to not see the connection that these, you know, these demonic forces have, they have such a stronghold in our society, you know, and we're starting to see, you know, you see it in people. You see these behaviors, and you know that they are demonic. And it's because of, we are so far away from the Torah. We're away from the Torah. We are not walking with God. Most people are walking away from God and have walked away from Him. And this is a problem. And so, when you learn the root of these things, you learn where they come from, you have to make a choice to walk away from them. You just have to. And so let's go to Leviticus chapter 20. And the Lord spoke unto Moses, saying, Again thou shalt say to the children of Israel, whoever he is, be the children of Israel of strangers that sojourner in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones, and he shall face, and I will set my face against that man, and I will cut him off from among his people, because he has given his seed to Moloch, and he has defiled my sanctuary and defamed my holy name. These people were doing this, and they were doing it in God's honor. You know, I hear so many times, well, God knows my heart. Well, you know, we know that's not the date, and we're just doing it because it's in God's honor. Well, these people were doing that in the sanctuary of God, and He said He's going to set His face against them forever, and He's going to destroy their soul. So, you know, you need to not worry about what your heart thinks, because the Bible says the heart is wicked above all other. Who can trust it? Your heart is wicked. You know, and you need to remove these things. You need to remove this love for these things. And I say this for my own personal thing, because I was raised to keep these holidays, and it was a very hard thing for me to get rid of. I really, really had to work at it and to cut these things out of my life. But to cut them out of my life gave me a better relationship with the Father, you know, that I didn't have before, because I was caught up in this idolatry and I didn't even know it. You know, and that's where I think most people are. Okay, and it says, and if the people of the land I will set my face against a man, and I will cut him off from among his people, because he hath given his seed to Moloch to defile my sanctuary and profane my holy name. And if the people of the land do any ways hide their eyes from the man when he giveth his seed to Moloch, and not kill him, then I will set my face against that man and against his family, and will cut him off, and all that go whoring after him, and commit whoredom with Moloch, with and among their people. And the soul that turneth after such familiar spirits and wizards, and go a whoring after them, I will even set my face against your soul, and I will cut you off from among your people. Sanctify yourself. Sanctify means to set yourself apart. You should not resemble a pagan. You should not resemble a witch. You should be different from everybody of all the peoples of the earth. So sanctify yourself and be holy, for I am the Lord your God. You shall keep my statutes and do them. I am the Lord which sanctifies you. So he's saying that to participate in these things, to do these things, even to reenact these things, this is not something that his people should be doing. And, you know, I tell you these things, and I know it's hard for people to hear, but I genuinely do care for people, and I care for your eternal well-being. And I want you to have a relationship with the Father, Yahweh. And I want you to get an understanding, and I want you to have a pure relationship with Him, and to walk with Him, and to walk to Him, and with Him, and live your life for Him, and not be caught up in all of this paganism. And when you really get to the root of it, it is very wicked and very evil things. It's horrible. And so what has happened, we see in Jeremiah chapter 16, and we start in verse 19. It says, O Lord, my strength, my fortress, and my refuge in the day of affliction, the Gentiles shall come up from the ends of the earth, and shall say, Surely our fathers have inherited lies and vanities, and things that is of no profit. Shall a man make gods to himself when there are no gods? Therefore, behold, I would once cause him to know that I will cause him to know mine hand and my might, and that they shall know that my name is Yahweh. Now see, there's your scripture right there, and that's what's happened. We have inherited these lies, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else. You know, I inherited these things, and just because I inherited it doesn't make it right. You know, it was wrong. It was totally wrong. And I try to teach my children. My children have never really, the older two have participated in these things when they were very small, but probably by the time they were in school, that was it for them. They didn't do it anymore. So, you know, it's up to us to seek the truth. He wants us to do our due diligence and to find out the truth. And we have to teach our children the truth. We have to lead them in the way that they should go. And so I challenge you today, the upcoming holiday that's coming is, of course, Easter. And so you should check your heart. You know, does your heart want these things? Does your heart need these things? And all you have to do to test that, to see if it has a stronghold in your heart, is to tell yourself that you're just not going to participate in it. You're not going to do any eggs. You're not going to do any bunnies. You're not going to do the ham. You know, the ham is actually a tradition that goes way, way back to like Noah's day, you know, with the sun god named Nimrod and Tammuz, you know. So these are all traditions. These are all things that were there. You know, a lot of our things that we do, it's just tradition, folklore, and that's all dedicated to these sun gods and the goddesses, and we are completely consumed with it. So, you know, test yourself and see if that's something that you can do without. Because if you can't, then you know that it really has a stronghold in your heart, and you need to really pray about it. And so you need to know that these things, they were done in the sanctuary of God, and they were done in honor of God. The golden calf, he says that, you know, they even proclaimed that this is in honor of the Lord, Yahweh. But he still wanted to kill them. And so you need to understand that doing these things and participating and learning the way of the heathen, that is not the way we're supposed to do. That's not what we're supposed to behave, and we are supposed to be separate, and we should never resemble the heathen. And so I just hope that you all have enjoyed this. I'm sorry it went so long. I had a lot of information, but you need to check into these holidays and see that at their root, at their core, it is nothing but wickedness, child sacrifice, just demons, and they have influenced so many people, and we can see their influence now heavily in our society. We are surrounded by their influence. And so I pray that you all will step away from these things, and that you will begin to walk as Yeshua walked, and you will walk toward him instead of away from him.